Hello and welcome to this session of the Curriculum Fair. I am joined by Emily Beeson from Open Up Resources, who will be sharing about OUR Math and their new California edition of their math program today. Okay, Emily, it's all you.
Thank you. Hi everyone. I'm Emily Beeson, one of the Curriculum Success Directors at Open Up Resources, and I'm really excited to present our math curriculum today and to introduce our newly updated National K-8 program with a version tailored specifically for California. So this version aligns with your state standards while enhancing the strengths you already know and love. What I want to point out is that this isn't just an add-on and that we simply try to align with the California standard after the fact. This is a curriculum that was intentionally designed and seamlessly integrated into our existing K-8 program to ensure coherence, alignment, and a natural fit within what students are already learning. So during our time together, I'll walk you through some of the key additions and improvements that make this version even more aligned, supportive, and impactful for both teachers and students. So, as I mentioned, this isn't just a shift in instruction, it's a shift in belief. And Open Up Resources K-8 Math was built to make that vision real in classrooms across California. So today we're going to look at what makes this curriculum not just standard aligned, but California designed. You'll see how the materials reflect the priorities of the California math framework: rigorous content, equitable access, strong multilingual learner supports, and even environmental literacy. You may have already noticed that every image you see, so when you look at the screen, you'll see our teacher guides, student workbooks, and other materials has been intentionally updated to reflect California's geography and identity. So we've included visuals that feel familiar and meaningful: local landmarks, regional landscapes, cultural references, all designed so students can see themselves, their communities, and their state in the materials. Each cover represents a coherent, connected journey through the big ideas of mathematics, one that invites every student into the learning. So, before we dive into the curriculum, I want to pause and reflect on who we are at Open Up Resources. So, Open Up Resources is a nonprofit organization with a simple but ambitious mission to ensure every student, no matter their zip code, background, or learning style, has access to high quality learning experiences. We work side by side with schools and districts to provide research-based, standard aligned curriculum. At the center of our work are three commitments represented in this Venn diagram you see: high quality, access, and community. Our resources live right at the intersection of these priorities. They're designed not just to elevate instruction, but to remove barriers and build a sense of belonging for every student. And above all, we center students. Our materials are intentionally crafted to honor, celebrate, and empower the diverse learners in California. So throughout this presentation, we'll continue to come back and reference this slide. This provides a snapshot of what makes Open Up Resources K-8 Math not just a high quality curriculum, but one intentionally built for California. Think of it, think of this redesign as remodeling your home. We didn't just add on a new California room. We opened up the structure, checked the foundation, and rebuilt it to reflect those priorities in the California math framework. So now to give you an example of some of that equity in action through the lesson components. So in this slide, I want to showcase how the curriculum is designed through the lesson components. You'll see that this particular lesson falls in section C, which is multi-digit division, where the big idea is simple but powerful. Students explore how changing quantities using factors and area models help them divide multi-digit numbers. These big ideas aren't just tucked away, they're highlighted at the section level in both the student and teacher editions, giving every lesson a clear mathematical purpose. As we walk through the lesson components, pay attention to how these structures come together, showing students not just how to do the math, but why it works, while also ensuring a strong alignment to our criteria. So here we're looking at the lesson level from both the teacher and student editions. You'll notice the content and math practice standards are clearly labeled and easy to reference. In the teacher edition, we also identify which standards are being directly addressed and which are being built on, and in other lessons, you'll see standards being built towards. The mathematical practice for this lesson, MP2, are explicitly named so teachers can support students in developing those habits of mind through instruction. You'll notice in the student edition to the right, we make these connections visible too. So students begin to see the purpose and coherence of the work they're doing. Now I want to shift our attention to the consistent and intentional structure of our math curriculum. And this has not changed. This is very similar or the same actually as our national version. So all the content follows the same flow. It starts with an invitation to the mathematics to make grade level concepts accessible. And then it moves into a deep study of concepts and procedures, and then ends with opportunities for students to consolidate and apply their understanding. So this structure is mirrored at every level. At the unit level, we always begin with an introductory lesson, then a series of instructional lessons, and then wrap up with a culminating synthesis. If we move down to the lesson level, you'll see a familiar rhythm of a warm up, a classroom activity, and a cool down, just like just like you see at the unit level. And then at the activity level, you'll see it guides teachers to launch, facilitate work time, and then also synthesize that learning. So this design not only supports student learning, but also helps educators build predictable, cognitively rich routines that are instructionally manageable. So now let's look at how each grade level course is structured across the year. So this visual shows the intentional design from start to finish. And I'll be honest with you, when I first saw this chart, I was like, what is happening? There's a lot of arrows moving everywhere. But now this is actually one of my favorite charts, and I could spend a really long time talking about it. So you'll see here that every course begins with that introductory unit. We're going to highlight grade 4 here. So you'll see that in grade 4, this unit serves as an invitation to the mathematics. It's designed to be accessible and welcoming with rich content and concrete examples. So while also introducing students to the routines and norms of the curriculum. The bulk of the year is spent in units like 4.2 through 4.8. This is where students engage in that deep study of priority and supporting standards, building both that conceptual understanding and procedural fluency. And then at the end of the year, every course concludes with a unit like 4.9 called Putting It All Together. And this is where students consolidate and apply what they've learned. It gives the year a meaningful and joyful close. You can see how the curriculum scaffolds learning from accessible entry points to deep understanding with a chance to reflect and apply at the end. Now let's turn our attention to support for diverse learners. So the supports are intentionally designed to help ensure that multilingual learners, students with disabilities, and advanced learners all have access to grade level mathematics. This is so important when we think about the students that we serve. Every classroom has a wide range of strengths, needs, and backgrounds. The supports built into the curriculum allow teachers to differentiate instruction and provide enrichment opportunities so that every student can engage meaningfully with the content. For example, you might see scaffolds that provide language support for multilingual learners, visual representations, and hands-on materials for students who need concrete supports, or extension activities for students who are ready to go deeper. These supports aren't afterthoughts. They're woven into the lessons from the start. So supports in our curriculum are aligned to the universal design for learning guidelines. And these are based on three core principles: providing alternate means of engagement, representation, or action and expression. These supports give teachers additional ways to adjust the learning environment so students can access activities, engage with content, and communicate their understanding. They're designed to help teachers identify and select the supports that are most appropriate for their students. The UDL guidelines, the Universal Design for Learning, are about making teaching and learning work for everyone based on what science tells us and about how people learn. So these guidelines aren't just for teachers, they're for curriculum developers, research, and even parents. Anyone who wants to learn how to make learning accessible and meaningful. They offer practical, concrete strategies for engaging all learners with challenging content. I recommend checking out this chart when you get a chance, and you'll see the web address at the bottom. So, in a problem-based math curriculum, sense making and language go hand in hand. Math just isn't about numbers, it's also about talking, writing, listening, and reasoning. And students are expected to explain their thinking, state assumptions and make conjectures, construct arguments, and listen and respond. This curriculum is designed to support both math and language learning at the same time. For students learning English, there's extra support to develop language so everyone can participate fully. Looking at this table, you can see how some of these strategies help students do math and language at the same time. You'll also notice mathematical language routines, and this should be familiar to those who have already used our national version. And these are especially important for students who are struggling with language proficiency. But I like to say they're beneficial for all learners. This curriculum includes instruction designed to develop language alongside that math, creating those language-rich environments where every student has space to participate. Our KA math program incorporates research-based mathematical language routines that was developed at Stanford University. So you'll see these MLRs, as we call them, integrated throughout the curriculum. These routines help multilingual learners and truly all students access both mathematical language and math concepts. The routines are structured, meaningful, and engaging, and they can be adapted to fit your students' needs. The best part of it is that they're already embedded inside the lesson. So don't have to look for it, or it's not just showcased at the unit level. So you don't have to create them from scratch. They're listed there for you in the lessons and to support with the lessons. Another thing that's really important is the intentional progression of disciplinary language. And this is a powerful tool for ensuring all students can access and engage with math. So you'll see this chart shows how specific academic terms, like for this example, reminder, are introduced and developed over time across the unit. So, in lesson 13, students are expected to understand the word receptively, meaning they can recognize and interpret it when they see or hear it. But then by lesson 19, students are expected to use the word productively in their speech, in writing, or in explanations. This progression ensures that all students, especially English learners, build a language they need to do math and talk about math. Importantly, these supports are embedded throughout the curriculum. They're not separate resources. They're integrated into instruction to develop both that conceptual understanding and academic language. There are also language objectives, and this is new to the California version of the curriculum. And this can be found throughout each of the lessons. At the top of each lesson plan, along with the learning goals, you'll see these language objectives. And these tell us the language students need to use and understand to fully participate in the activities. So the language objectives support all four language domains: reading, writing, listening, and speaking, and highlight the words and phrases that make math concepts clearer. These are used to keep all students on track. So you can start by writing them out at the beginning of the session so students can refer back to them during activities and discussion. Our commitment to access also means ensuring that students with disabilities are supported in meaningful and proactive ways. So our Open Up Resources K-8 Math includes strategies and scaffolds that address a wide range of learning needs, such as organization, memory, attention, and conceptual processing, just to name a few. These supports are intentionally built into the materials and lesson design. They're not left up to chance. Teachers can receive clear, practical guidance on how to differentiate based on these needs so that every student can participate in rich grade level mathematics. This integrated approach makes the curriculum accessible, inclusive, and responsive to the diverse learning profiles of our students. I also want to highlight the built-in supports for students with disabilities, particularly in this example, those who would benefit from help with organization and sustained attention. So in this lesson, you can see that teachers are encouraged to give concrete manipulatives to support understanding. These moments of structure keep students engaged, reduce that cognitive load, and still preserve the full mathematical challenge of the task. This illustrates how Open Up Resources approaches access, not just as an add-on, but as a core design principle. Here's another example of how our teacher guidance strengthens student-centered instruction. At the end of every activity, you'll find thoughtfully crafted synthesis questions, like the ones shown here, that help students make sense of what they've learned and talk about their ideas in meaningful ways. You'll also notice built-in prompts designed to advance student thinking. So we want to think of those students that may be ready for enrichment. These are especially also helpful for students when they drift off track. Instead of correcting them outright, these questions gently steer them toward productive reasoning while honoring their ideas. All of these supports give teachers clear, effective tools to deepen understanding and open up meaningful learning pathways for every student, including those who are ready for that extra challenge. And then once again, to close the lesson, there's also the synthesis. So we saw that activity synthesis. Now we see that synthesis at the end of the lesson. And this brings everyone back together to reflect and make sense of the day's learning. And if those ideas don't surface on their own, teachers have access to targeted follow-up prompts that help students clarify, deepen, and connect their thinking. It's a structured yet flexible way to ensure all students leave the lesson with strong understanding. Now let's revisit the curriculum highlights. This one focuses on relevant and rigorous. These tasks are designed specifically, as I mentioned, for California standards, connecting math to real-world contexts like data, financial, and environmental literacy. Students see how math is part of everyday life and the world around them. At the same time, the tasks challenge students to think deeply, reason carefully, and solve meaningful problems. This blend of relevance and rigor keeps learning engaging while helping students develop those strong practical mathematical skills. So here is an example of how a lesson will how lessons can focus on the environmental principle and concepts. As I mentioned, these connections aren't just tacked on, they're woven throughout the curriculum to support that real-world relevance and cross-disciplinary thinking. Students explore math through authentic environmental contexts such as pollution, plant growth, animal conservation, food waste, recycling, just to name a few. And on the right, you can see how these lessons highlight and call out these environmental principles. Over the next few slides, you look at some examples of these real-world performance-based tasks. Students are not just practicing calculations, they're applying what they know in a context that's both mathematically rigorous and environmentally relevant, connecting directly to California's environmental principles and concepts. These tasks are meant to go beyond the rote work. They challenge students to think critically, reason carefully, and solve meaningful problems. Here's an example of a performance task that focuses on financial literacy. In this task, students are exploring how to save, budget, and make smart spending choices, applying math in practical, hands-on ways. I think this is so relevant for students because it gives them tools they'll actually use in the future, helping them to think positively about money, how to save, and how to make thoughtful financial decisions. You'll see this performance task focuses on data literacy. So in this task, students work with graphs, tables, and surveys to explore relationships between variables and make sense of data. They're just not reading information, they're analyzing, interpreting, and drawing conclusions based on what they see. Next, we're going to quickly dive into assessments. The Open Up Resources math curriculum offers a robust assessment system that helps teachers understand where students are in their learning and also how to plan for the next steps. So you'll see formative assessments like diagnostic tools, cool downs, practice problems, and section checkpoints that are built right into daily lessons so teachers get real-time insight into student understanding. There's also summative assessments, which include end of unit tests and those performance tasks that I mentioned earlier, giving students meaningful ways to demonstrate what they know in authentic contexts. You'll notice that assessments in this curriculum isn't treated as a single event. It's an ongoing process that supports both teaching and learning every step of the way. You'll see every formative and summative assessment is paired with actionable supports for teachers, whether it's looking back to prior learning, responding to student thinking in real time, or offering specific next day adjustments. For summative moments, you'll find built-in guidance for reteaching and intervention using other parts of the curriculum. Assessment in our math curriculum isn't just about identifying what students know, it's also about what to do next. These supports ensure assessment is not a dead end, but a launchpad for learning. Now let's circle back to the original slide on curriculum highlights. Another feature we want to dive into is engaging learning. So you'll see that the lessons are problem-based. So students aren't just following steps, they're reasoning, collaborating, and really making sense of the math. There's a lot of rich discussion built in where students are asked to share ideas, ask questions, and connect their thinking to the big ideas in the lesson. The goal is to keep learning active and student-centered. Students aren't just solving problems, they're thinking critically, talking through ideas, and making connections that stick. You'll also see in our K-8 math program that mathematical representations aren't just decorations. They're purposeful tools that help students make sense of the math and solve problems in meaningful ways. This chart highlights some of the key representation progressions built into the curriculum across areas like measurement, base 10 operations, fractions, and algebraic thinking. They're intentionally designed to move from concrete to pictorial to abstract, supporting both conceptual understanding and procedural fluency. And then it's not just about showing students these representations. They're encouraged to choose, create, and compare them as part of their own reasoning. This helps students think more deeply and really own their learning. Our final highlight is community driven. Open Up Resources isn't just a curriculum, it's part of a larger network of educators who are sharing strategies, learning from one another, and leading change together. You'll see throughout the curriculum supports for teachers, and I'm going to dive into a few examples of those. And it's about creating that connected, empowered network where ideas are shared, challenges are solved collectively, and teaching practice continue to evolve. So one way we support our communities of teachers is through the teacher reflection. At the end of every K-5 lesson, you'll find reflection prompts designed to encourage teachers to think deeply about the mathematical community they're building with their students. No other curriculum embeds critical self-reflection tools like this, helping teachers pause, assess, and reflect their practice as they guide student learning. It's a small but powerful way to ensure teaching is instructional, responsive, and focused on growth for both students and teachers. In addition to core instruction, the curriculum also has dedicated PLC lessons like the one shown here, designed to foster teacher collaboration and professional learning. These lessons are clearly marked and embedded throughout the curriculum. They allow you to dig deeply into the math content, anticipate student thinking, and co-plan instructional strategies. It's a way to ensure that teachers are learning together, supporting each other, and refining their practice while improving student outcomes. I hope that as you start implementing our California math curriculum, you don't won't just see alignment, but you'll see a curriculum that exceeds expectation in every way. As I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, this curriculum wasn't designed just to check boxes. It's built for California and really built for every student. Thank you so much for our time today. I hope that you've enjoyed exploring our California K-8 math together and seeing how it supports equity, engagement, and deep learning for both students and teachers. I'm truly, truly excited about this transition from our existing K-8 math curriculum to this new version designed specifically for California. And I can't wait to support you throughout that process. Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Thank you, Emily. I'm going to stop the recording so that we can move into Q&A.